Hello there, this is Sam, and today, for episode 56, I'm going to start off the podcast in a slightly different way. So, I feel like I'm a teacher. I'm not formally a teacher, but for all the people listening to this podcast, I'm basically a teacher. And I think teachers don't just have to teach. They don't just have to give you the nuts and bolts of whatever it is you're learning. I think good teachers have to try and inspire and not just teach the ABCs, but to make people think and dream and want to be more. So I thought to do something different, I'd start off today's podcast with a poem. Not one of my own poems. Quite a famous poem. But I do love poetry. That's another thing about me that you probably should know. So I'm gonna read you a poem, and then we'll get started with our words. This poem is called Warning. When I am an old woman, I shall wear purple, with a red hat which doesn't go and doesn't suit me, and I shall spend my pension on brandy and summer gloves, and satin sandals, and say we've no money for butter. I shall sit down on the pavement when I'm tired, and gobble up samples in shops and press alarm bells, and run my stick along the public railings, and make up for the sobriety of my youth. I shall go out in my slippers in the rain, and pick flowers in other people's gardens, and learn to spit. You can wear terrible shirts and grow more fat, and eat 3 pounds of sausages at a go, or only bread and pickle for a week, and hoard pens and pencils, and beer mats and things in boxes. But now we must have clothes that keep us dry, and pay our rent, and not swear in the street, and set a good example for the children. We must have friends to dinner, and read the papers. But maybe I ought to practice a little now, so people who know me are not too shocked and surprised when suddenly I am old and start to wear purple. So that poem was Warning by Jenny Joseph. Love that. And if you have any comments on my reading of poetry, feel free to let me know. And now let's go review the words from the previous episode. Those were mitigate. That means to make less severe, to make less painful. Coffer, that is a small chest or strong box for holding valuable things. Antagonize, that means to cause someone else to become hostile or angry, to annoy someone. And the last word was garrulous, that means excessively talkative, someone who talks a lot, and especially about trivial matters, things which aren't very important. Our first word for the new words is implode. That's spelled I-M-P-L-O-D-E. Remember, that's I-M, not I-N. Implode is a verb, and you'll realize it sounds very similar to explode. So, implode means to collapse or cause to collapse violently inward. So it's basically the opposite of an explosion. With an explosion, the explosion travels outward from the source, and that's a standard sort of explosion. So if you imagine a stick of dynamite going off, that's an explosion. So remember, words that begin with im, I am often is a substitution for in. So implosion, the im means come in, a bit like immigration. Immigration means people are coming to your country. And so implode means exploding inward, not outward. So think explosion, like exiting the building, going outwards. Implosion, it's coming violently inwards. There aren't really many synonyms for implode, but a few that are sort of synonyms are fall in, cave in, or fold. So yeah, that word has a very specific meaning collapse violently inwards, like an explosion, but coming in rather than out. And yeah, there aren't many other words that mean similar to that. Our second word is strut. Strut. Now, that's spelled S-T-R-U-T, strut, and there are a few meanings for strut. So I want to stick with one meaning, which is the verb meaning to strut, and to strut means to walk in a very certain way. Now let me explain this. To strut, if you imagine someone who really is very arrogant, who thinks they're someone's pretty special, and they're walking and they're kind of walking jauntily, very confident, a bit like a peacock. They're swaggering or striding and with a very erect back, quite pompous, maybe a little conceited. That's to strut. Someone who is strutting might be walking as though they're trying to impress other people, and they think they're something, maybe they're a little bit vain or pompous. Some synonyms of strut are swagger, swank, parade, stride, or sachet. You could imagine the image of a peacock, a male peacock with beautiful feathers, and he's strutting along, showing off his feathers, saying, "Everyone, look at me, look at how fancy I look." That's a good image to try and remember. Strut. To strut, to walk proudly or arrogantly, often with a stiff, erect posture, and often in a vain, conceited, or arrogant kind of way. Our third word is pragmatic. Pragmatic. That's spelled Pragmatic. Pragmatic. Now, pragmatic is an adjective, and to be pragmatic means to deal with things or events in a sensible and realistic way, often one that's based on practical considerations rather than theoretical considerations. So, here's an example. Imagine you had no job for a while, and you really, really wanted to find a job. And you went to apply to a company for a certain job that you thought would be the perfect, ideal job for you. And you went for your interview and they said, "Great, we want to hire you, but for this lower down position, a less ideal position for you." Now, ideally, if you were an idealist, you might want to decline that offer because it wasn't the best role for you. In your mind, it wasn't the theoretical best role for you. But if you're being pragmatic, you understand that you need a job, you need to make money, and the pragmatic view might be, well, I may as well take this job even though it's not the perfect job, because I might be able to work my way up to that position. So to be pragmatic means to deal with things sensibly and in a realistic way. So it's not always sensible to imagine you can get the best and most perfect job possible. It's a more realistic idea, a more sensible idea to think, well, if I can get my foot in the door with this lesser job, if I show I'm a good worker and I'm smart, I can work my way up to the perfect job. It's not always a realistic idea to imagine you can get the perfect job first time. So some synonyms of pragmatic are practical, matter-of-fact, sensible, down-to-earth, businesslike, no-nonsense, and having one's feet on the ground. Often, a pragmatic solution is contrasted with an idealistic solution, or a solution that, in your mind, might be the perfect solution, but when it comes to practical realities, it's too difficult or otherwise not possible to have the perfect solution. So you come up with a more practical, realistic, or pragmatic solution. And our final word is contentious. Contentious. That's spelled Contentious. So contentious is an adjective, and contentious means something that is likely to cause an argument or something that is controversial. So if you see your friends having a conversation about something and you come in and say something very contentious, you've said something that's so controversial it's likely to cause a fight or a big argument. So say, for example, some of your friends are big Real Madrid soccer fans and they all love Ronaldo. That's Cristiano Ronaldo, the famous soccer player. And they're having a conversation about him and you come up and say, oh, you guys are all crazy. I think Cristiano Ronaldo is a bad player and I think some other player is so much better than him. That would be a contentious opinion because it's an opinion that's likely to cause an argument. It's controversial. It's very disputed. A word very similar to contentious is controversial. So they both start with con. So if you can remember, controversial means very, very similar thing to contentious. A contentious word or a contentious argument is also usually controversial too. Some other synonyms are disputable, debatable, and disputed. A person could also be described as contentious if they're the type of person who loves coming in and being very argumentative, starting arguments, or saying things that provoke others. Most people might know someone like that, who just loves to argue, loves to say things that make other people irritated or controversial statements. So let's quickly review our words now. Implode. Implode. That means to collapse or cause something to collapse violently inward. Strut. Strut. To strut means to walk with a stiff and tall gait, extremely arrogantly or conceited or vain. Pragmatic. Pragmatic. To be pragmatic means to deal with things in a sensible, realistic or practical way, rather than an idealistic way or in a theoretical way. Contentious. Contentious. That means causing or likely to cause an argument. It means to be controversial, to say controversial things. Let's move on to our test sentences now. Just try and work out which word I'm referring to with each sentence. The very vain man walked up and down the street in his new shoes, hoping for people to look at him. Strut. The mad scientist's house violently collapsed in on itself after his latest experiment with antimatter generators. Implode. Sometimes it's just not worth trying to find the perfect car. It takes too much time. But instead, getting something practical that just gets the job done. Pragmatic. John loved picking the most controversial side to any debate. He enjoyed getting his opponents riled up and angry. Contentious. So gang, that was our episode 56. I hope you enjoyed the poem. Please, if you have any feedback on that, let me know. I know that's a bit different, but it's just part of my personality that I really believe that the power of words, the power of fiction, the power of poetry. I think that whether you're a scientist or an artist or just anyone living in this world, to read fiction and poetry has a purpose. Even if you want to be a mathematician or a scientist who doesn't think you need to understand language or art, I really do believe it adds something. It adds something to your understanding of the world and to your understanding of people. But most importantly, whatever you do in life, mathematician or scientist or philosopher or journalist, whatever you end up doing, businessman, you will need words, you will need language to communicate with other people. And you have to understand that the more powerful the words you can use, the more you can move other people. That means making friends, that means making alliances, doing deals, anything. Anything you do in this world is going to be influenced by how well you can use language. If you can use poetic language, if you can use words to create emotion in people, that is the most powerful thing in the world. To be able to create emotion through language and words, that's a skill. So improving your use of language through understanding poetry, through improving your vocabulary, that is something that is going to pay itself off for you in 1,000 ways in your life. I 100% believe that. Anyway, as always, if you want to get in touch with me, please tweet me at samfold, get on the Facebook page at facebook.com/VictorPrepLearning, email me, sam@VictorPrep.com, give me feedback, I love it all, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye.